Mobile Hunters, the king of comfort has arrived. Go to tetherednation.com and check out the new Lockdown saddle. Over the past 2 years, Tethered has tested and refined a new approach to their saddle lineup. The Lockdown saddle takes the best-in-class features from the Phantom, like the Utilibridge, comfort channels, and included an expandable saddle body with their Lockdown link construction to take saddle hunting to the next level of comfort. As if this wasn't enough, they developed Lockdown haulers, which has a slightly rigid internal frame structure, so you can easily unzip, zip, and access haulers with one hand. And if you're a guy like me with no junk in your trunk and have issues with your saddle staying put while you're walking in to hunt, the Lockdown modular yoke solves this problem. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today, if you're watching the video, you'll recognize the gentleman's face and the flag, which I always appreciate behind you. It's the only episode that I do that we have that, and I think it's very appropriate. But my buddy, Mr. Austin Culbertson, what's going on, man?
You said that you appreciate the flag. It was the only what?
It's the only podcast episode that I do that has the flag on it. So I'm always appreciative of it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So how you been, man? You good?
Very good. Yep. Still walking on cloud nine, I think.
I bet, man. So you've had
a week ago.
Nice. Yeah. You had we'll get to the deer hunting part, but I think you even got, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the last time we spoke, you got married?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Got married in August.
You're on cloud nine from that still, right?
Yeah. That's the big thing. Yeah. Right there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Got to make sure we get that out of the way. Right?
August. Yeah. She was trying to do it in the fall. And, the fall is a tough time to want to do that because then you've got, I could do it once, but then you've got an anniversary every year. Mm-hmm. So I begged and pleaded, and we got it into August. And I dream of going out west and getting to do some elk hunting, and I know it starts September 1st, and I didn't want to get too close to opener for that, and always have an anniversary in the way. So
right,
got it done.
Nice. The my wife's birthday is 11th of November, so in the middle. Right. So it's like I miss her birthday every year because I'm always in Kansas or Missouri or wherever I'm at. And she's just kind of gotten used to it to where, I always pay for it on the back end, though. It's like I end up having to do something over the top to make up for it. And then my daughter's birthday is at the very beginning of September. And so like the first week of elk season for the most part is out for me. I messed up and I scheduled an elk hunt, not this season, but the season before, and went out to Idaho, and I missed my daughter's birthday. It's the first one I've ever missed. And she was like not letting me forget it. So I'm like, all right, I can't do it. Like, it's got to be like September 10th is like my elk time. Like if I'm going to go elk hunting, essentially.
I do it right then. See, my wife's birthday is October 7th. And we were actually, this year, we were helping Jace blood trail a deer. So
Nice.
That day. So
That's awesome.
She helped all day long. We looked for it. So
that's good. Then you married well, sir. Then if she's on the blood trail, dude,
she's not only on the blood trail, she's hooked. I tell you what, she got so far into it. She's been, she's got her own mobile setup that I did not force her to pay for. She wanted to go out and buy it. She ended up getting a Lone Wolf Custom Gear .75, and she's tested out a couple different sticks from people, and she likes the Shakars, so she's going with them. Like she's dialed.
That's
she's
awesome.
just kind of waiting on a good buck. So
right, yeah, you'll be borrowing her gear is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm going to try those sticks out. I like them.
Right. That's awesome, dude. That's cool, man, whenever you can share that kind of stuff. It's funny you mentioned Jace, right? Because I just had your buddy Hunter on.
Yep.
And I was telling him, I was like, dude, I've got the corner on like the Missouri guys. I was like having them on the podcast. I was like, I had you on. I've had Jace on a couple times. Like I had Hunter on. My buddy Justin Wright's from Missouri. He's a slayer. I was like, Missouri's got some killers, dude.
Where's Justin from? If that doesn't give away too much about him.
No, well, I forget where he's from exactly right now. I know he cut his teeth in southern Missouri. I want to say around the Mark Twain National Forest, right? That's correct. That's yeah. I want to say that's
there.
I think that's where he grew up. Actually, I'm almost certain that's where he grew up, and that's kind of where he cut his teeth hunting. And then I want to say he moved a little further north because now he's more in like ag country. Mm-hmm. And that was like a lot of what we talked about when we did he and I did a session was just like, it was actually people think ag country is really easy. He's like, but it was hard for him coming from more big woods and having to kind of like
woods, kind of hill country stuff.
Yeah,
from southern Missouri, you're saying?
Yeah. And then transitioning to farm country, he was like, I had to almost relearn everything. He's like, because everything I was doing in the big woods just didn't really apply as well, in ag country. He's like, so for me, he's like, it was backwards. But yeah, he's a killer. But I was like, I have a corner on the Missouri guys, dude. I was like, not only that, I was like, but you guys have like a crew that you guys just kill big deer, dude. Like that's just, I feel like you guys need to start like a gang of some sort.
We've got our own little text gang and everything, but we don't. I guess they both film all their stuff. I try to film. I think I'm 1 for 4 on actually getting deer on film and shot. Oh, I'm so bad at it. Self-filming is about the hardest thing in the world.
It is.
I'm kudos to all the people like on the the bowhunting.com, that crew that have always done that. I've watched them for I don't know how many seasons, but I never thought it was that hard, but it's very hard. But yeah.
Dude, I've tried it a bunch of years. I actually messed up on a really big deer in Iowa because of a camera. And and I told myself I was never going to film again because it's like I just like screwed the whole situation up. It was like it should have been a dead deer and it ended up not being. And then every year I pull it back out. I'm like, I'm going to try it again. So this last buck that I just killed, he can't like the quick part of it is like I saw him come in, I got him on film a little bit, then he came out and he worked a scrape, and I thought I had him on, but like the way the camera was, it was so far like off to my right or off to my left, I couldn't see the viewfinder to see if I had him in frame, so I just had it backed out all the way and pointed it toward him, right? Because he spent a bunch of time like raking a tree, making a scrape, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, this is like great footage, And then he starts walking where I was going to shoot him, and I kind of just moved it to where I thought he was going, and I set it, and he walked in, and when I stood up to like draw, the bag of my saddle, like my pouch on my saddle, hit the camera, moved it out of the way so the deer went out of frame.
That's what happened to mine this year. I had everything on him, and then when I went to draw, I don't know what hit it, but I bumped it with my elbow or something, and it scooched to the left, and it got the deer running off, but it never shot or anything. I was just like, oh my God.
Same thing.
I was just thinking to myself, well, and I almost didn't shoot. I almost let down to fix it. I was thinking to myself, Austin, you are not that guy. What, like, shoot your deer. Like, I'm not filming this for anybody else. Like, who cares? Right. I want the deer dead, not this on camera.
Right.
I mean, sure, if both would be great, but if I had to pick one, it's always going to be the deer.
Well, the same exact thing happened to me. It's like it moved out of the way. You hear the bow go off, and then you see him run into the timber, essentially, and like the area that I was in, like it was a bunch of swamp grass, so it was all red this time of year, and so I couldn't see blood for shit. Like I found my arrow, and I saw like the first spot of blood at impact, but like finding it otherwise, and it was all like wet and dewy in there too, so it doesn't like stick. It kind of starts running right away. You know what I mean? Like it gets thin.
Red grass.
Yeah, and so what really kind of helped me out was I went back and looked at the footage because I was like, what tree did he run in front of to get into the timber? You know, because I thought I heard him crash, like, and I didn't think it was far away. And so when I went back and looked at the footage, I could see what tree he went in front of into the timber. And I walked in there, and there's like a little small like path you could see deer had been using. And then there was like an obvious opening of like, if a deer were going to travel north, like they would use this, And so I literally just turned and like, he was laying like right there. It was like,
oh, that's a wonderful ending. He was just right. How far did he go?
I mean, from the tree that I shot him from was like little less than 40 yards, I think, right around 40 yards, but a little less.
I don't even think I've had one. I've had one deer run that little of a distance. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled the heart, like I heart shot him, like it went right through his heart. It was.
Yeah, I read your thing. It said it had a perfect. What broadhead were you shooting that went right through it?
Tooth of the arrow is what I started shooting, the 1 inch, the small ones, just because they fly like. And I don't work with those guys at all. It's just like I've been playing hell trying to find a good broadhead for a couple years that I really liked that would take some damage because I hated, like, I wanted something I could resharpen or reuse, essentially. Because, like, when I find, like, kind of like me, like, so that arrow is that's the second deer I've killed with that arrow because it flies. Like, and I know it, like, I have confidence in it. I know when I let it rip.
Oh, that whole thing, that whole arrow.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like broadhead, the actual arrow itself, and so like when I find one that works, then I can get it to fly exactly how I want it to fly, and I shoot I shoot some like target practice with it or whatever, just to make sure it's dialed and stuff like that. And when I find the one that flies, like I feel confident in, that's the number one. And like, I will use that arrow until like,
that's weird. Yeah. Well, it's not weird, but that's the same thing I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I shot my deer with arrow number one because it flies really, really good.
And that will be arrow number one for me until like I lose it or it breaks. Like, you know what I mean? Like it'll just keep going back in the quiver like every year, you know?
Yep.
But anyway, we didn't get on here to talk about what I have going on, man. We're going to talk about what you got going on, dude. So for anyone who didn't listen to the previous episode that Austin and I did, we talked a lot about just like your hunting approach and stuff like that. So we're not going to talk about that so much today, but there was a buck you kind of introduced on that episode called, I think you called him the wide one, right? That you were kind of
super original name there.
Super original name, right? Yeah. We're not getting any points for creativity here.
No, it's not a cool name.
Right. But so I guess I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about that deer, you know, and how you kind of found him and, you know, what made like the hunt for him challenging kind of initially. So like, let's go back in the Wayback Machine. Like, when did you first find this deer?
First spotted him in the summer of either 2019 or 2020. Hunted, so it had been 2020, I think. And 2020 season, going into 2020 seasons when we first knew of him. It wasn't the first year I hunted him. Okay. But that's when we first knew of him. He was kind of spindly, was always wide. That's where he got his name. But he hadn't put on a bunch of tine length yet and hadn't put on very much mass. And then over the years, he was living in one core area, and we would watch him each summer, and he got bigger and bigger. And then finally, the 22 season, last season's whenever I really decided to dedicate my season to that deer. And and I would find him in the summer times doing, you know, just summer scouting from a high spot. And I would, you know, watch him throughout the summer and just see what he did. And then that's kind of how I found him. I don't know. Right. Do you want to go into what happened, I guess? Yeah.
I mean, we'll get there in a second. I definitely want to get there because I want to get like the whole backstory before we get into to this season. But so when you found him and you decided to hunt him, like what was it about that deer, like in that first season that you hunted him, you know, or even like the seasons leading up to this season where you like what was it about him that made him challenging to hunt? Like what was his like superpower, I guess?
His superpowers was where he decided to live, and the more I've watched him, the more I think he's got more than just that. The way he traveled, and it was just crazy. He was really smart. I mean, he was around a lot of pressure. That was a thing, and he lived with constant pressure from not just hunters, but from all kinds of people in the outdoors, and so he dealt with that quite a bit. His thing, you know, he wasn't hard to find because he had a core area, but he was hard to hunt. And that's because he lived in a 200-acre patch of CRP with no trees. There was one tree in the entire patch, and that's the tree I would get into to watch him. And that was it. And he would never come close to that tree. He was never within 300, 400, 500 yards of that tree. But I could watch him from that tree, and then my plan was always to, you know, every time I would see him, I would get down and try to make a play on him from the ground. But the stuff he was living in was anywhere from 4 foot tall to 10 foot tall. Right. And it was 200 acres of it. So that was why that deer was so hard to hunt.
Right. That's crazy, man. Because for anyone who's not hunted, like, excuse me, the West at all, you know, and people, when they think of Missouri, they don't think of necessarily, I don't think, at least I didn't until I hunted it, that there was a bunch of like CRP kind of like patches and stuff like that. Like I always kind of thought of that as more of a, you know, a Kansas, Nebraska, maybe even like Eastern Colorado type of thing. Right. But there are spots, even like when you get into like some of the hill country that I hunted in Missouri, where you do have big patches of like CRP, which was just,
I know. I remember where we talked about where you had hunted, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's big patches of CRP around there. Yeah. And tall, and it's thicker than the stuff out west. It's not like that. It's not just one type of grass. It's a lot of reeds that are mixed in with, you know, a handful of different grasses that all get really, really big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the shocking thing is how tall some of that shit will grow. Because I know, the spot that I was at, the specific spot that I was at in Missouri, the CRP was like, I would say average height, where a person could walk through it, and if a buck was in it just standing up, like you definitely see him, right? But I've hunted some stuff in Kansas where it's like I went to walk into one time and like I saw it on a map and I was like, I'm gonna check this out, and I got there, I was like, yep, nope, like
check it out.
Yeah, I was like, I can't even see into it. I was like, I can't even from a vantage point, I was like, I couldn't tell you if there was a buck in there or not, even if there was one. It was just like that tall.
That was the problem this year. Was actually the beginning of the year. It was late summer. I had to give up on scouting him. Couldn't see him. The rain that they got in that area of Missouri made that stuff so overgrown. It's the tallest I'd ever seen it. And you could not see a deer moving that if you were standing over top of it.
Wow.
So, it was underneath the tree that I was using. It was like a minimum of 8 foot tall.
Damn. Yeah.
And it was a sea of it for 200 yards. Or, sorry, 200 acres.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. So he just lived in there, and it's not until they, NDC starts managing it until, that's when you can actually get in there and hunt that deer, is whenever they cut some of it or cut strips in it or take out some crop close to it so that he might, you might catch him using that or something like that. So,
right. So when was your first encounter with this deer?
Last year, you're saying?
Yeah. Or just in general. Did you have an encounter with him before last year?
Not hunting, no.
Not hunting. Okay. Just from observation.
Yes. Yeah. I watched him for years before that, but I watched him for the summer of 2020 and the summer of 2021. And then it was the summer of 2022 when I decided I was going to hunt him in 2020. And then now I've watched him. I watched him again in 23, but.
All right. So what was your first encounter with him in 22 then?
It would have just been seeing him from the tree. I knew exactly what I needed to do. It just was going to be hard to do it. It was, again, easy to find in a way. Easy to find might not be the right, but easy to know where he was, extremely hard to actually kill. Right. And I think multiple times it happened the same way, as I would see him walking through something slightly shorter where I could catch his rack, go, there he is, get out of my tree, which was 42 feet up high. I would climb out of there as fast as I could, get down and try to cut him off from where I thought he was going. And that was about the only way I thought I could kill him. I think that would have been the only way to kill him.
Right.
And I did that I hunted him every evening, but I didn't see him every evening. Mm-hmm. And then I think I had 4 different stalks on him before I actually shot him on October 2nd last year.
Yeah. So what was that? So what was that setup when you were able to get a shot off at him?
So that
was it the same thing you were just kind of describing, where you were like, I see him, I'm going to try to cut him off?
Yes and no. It's actually that. So all those first few times is before they did any cutting of like CRP, but finally they had mowed some of the CRP. They always do in early October. And I was able to watch him that morning. And I think that might be, the more I do this and the more I've at least hunted a couple key deer, the more important I think an observation sit in the morning is pivotal to be able to kill them. Because you get to watch where they go to bed, exactly where they go to bed. And that's what I did last year, and it's what I did this year, and I'll get into that. We'll get into that later. But watched him go to bed in a specific spot, and that afternoon slid in there on the ground, watched him stand up, and he was walking through cornrows. He got to the end of cornrows, sat down. When we got him to stand up, that's when I got a shot on him. But it took getting some of that mode to even be able to make a move on him, really.
Right.
Other than that, it was, futile to even try.
Right. So you had that hunt. He released an arrow, right? Because I'm forgetting now from the last time we talked. Like, when you released that arrow, did you feel like it was a fatal shot?
Yeah, I did. So Jason and I were hunting together and we both did once. He didn't get to see the shot take place, but just based on the blood spray and everything, I shot him at 22 yards on the ground, and he was just standing in tall enough stuff that I couldn't even really see his body hardly, just his back. And I had to guess, and I just, I prayed that my arrow would find a home behind his shoulder there, and it just, well, I sent you a picture just a second ago just so you could see it hit him square in the shoulder. And actually, I guess I got to open him up, right? So I know exactly what happened. It broke his shoulder. The arrow went in through that shoulder, into his chest cavity and punctured one lung.
Okay.
And he lived. So, but I thought it was fatal. We had, blood spraying 4 foot high on the corn. I watched him run off. He actually jumped over me.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I had to get out of the way, and he jumped over me, and then he kept running off with my arrow sticking in his side. I guess I thought it had better penetration. I didn't realize I'd hit him right in the shoulder at the time. Right. But tough deer.
Yeah, man.
He lived. I don't know. So, yeah, definitely thought it was fatal at the time. And I spent the remainder of my season looking for him. I didn't really – I never even pulled my bow back on another deer the rest of the season. So
yeah, their will to live is ridiculous. You know? It's – like that, someone stick me in the shoulder with a broadhead and one lung, like I'm done.
I'm gonna lay down. Yeah, lay down.
I know, right? He probably went out chasing does that night. Well, not really, but that was October. But you know what I mean.
Well, looking back, we may have seen him one time when I was scouting in late November. I think Hunter and I were watching from 2 different places, and he calls me and he goes, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" I said, "I'm seeing a big-bodied deer with a really long main beam." I said, "I can't tell you." It was like 1,300 yards away, but I was like, "I can't tell you if it's him or not, but it sure does look like him."
Right.
So that turns out it probably was, because I guess to keep going in the story, that's where that general area, which was different than his core home area, that's where a friend of ours ended up finding his shed.
Okay.
Letting me know that he was alive.
Okay.
So, I did not know.
Right, because I remember, when we talked the last time, that was the thing. Like, you weren't, I think you were still on the fence as to whether or not he was alive or not.
Yep, had no idea.
So after that,
I think our podcast was in February.
Yeah,
and it was late February, just a few weeks after our podcast. I think I got a picture of his shed.
Yeah. So what are you thinking after? So like you hit him, you think it's fatal, then you come to find that it's probably not, right? Over time.
Yeah.
Like, what are you thinking at that point? Like, what are your thoughts, right? Because this isn't like your run of the mill deer. This is a big deer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that shed, I've never gotten to see it. It's a friend of a friend's, and eventually I'd like to buy that from this person, but it's an 80-inch shed.
Yeah.
So it was a monster at the time. And what am I thinking? Well, before I knew he was alive or dead, I was just hoping he was still alive and that I would be able to hunt him the next year. And I think I went back and listened to our podcast just to kind of, think about listen to some of the things we talked about then. And I think at the very end of it, you asked me the same thing, and it was, I'm going to look for the wide one. Hopefully he's alive on him. So, yeah, that was my mindset. And once I got that message, it was like, brought tears to my eyes just to know he was, still alive and I could potentially hunt him again.
Right. What, when you think back on it, that kind of hunting him, observing him, being able to get close to him, finally getting an arrow off, like at him, right? And then you go through like, don't know if he's alive or not. Mm-hmm. How did that kind of whole experience shape your strategies for him going forward? So then you find out the shed, like someone found his shed, right? And so now he's alive. And like, look, man, I know what I would do. Like immediately, as soon as I know that deer's alive, it's like I'm already thinking about how am I going to hunt him. You know what I mean? Like it's already like started. Like I'm already And so I'm just curious for you, like how did how did that start to shape, that experience start to shape like your strategies as you start thinking about this coming year?
Well, I'll say this, I've not even said this to anybody, maybe Jace. I had a lot of self-doubt after that. It was really, it really hit me hard. Like I'd never tried so hard to kill one deer and then it not happen. And then hearing he was alive, I almost still had self-doubt about it. I was kind of struggling with it. It was like, I'm going to go hunt this deer that's immortal, that I can't seem to kill,
Right.
that no matter what I do, I don't think I'm going to, like, I secretly thought I was never going to kill him.
Right.
I wanted to, but it was, I don't know. I hated it, but that's how I felt.
Right.
But I knew that my mission was still going to be the same, that I was going to go after him. So I knew that it was just going to come down to watching him in the summer, finding if he was using the same core area, if he was using a new area, and kind of making my plan from there. But the biggest thing is definitely getting eyes back on him,
Mm-hmm.
and watching what he does. That's what I've learned has been the best thing for me is just getting as much time watching him as I can.
Right. So so after that first encounter, did you, for the upcoming season, did you adjust, did you make any adjustments based on that experience? Even if it was small, I
told myself I would never take a shot and that wasn't clear ever again. No matter what.
Yeah.
I won't. That's just that is an adjustment, I guess, in itself, is that I shot him through, and that was a dilemma I had was whether to shoot him in that tall grass or not, and I chose to. And in that moment I thought it was the right thing, and now looking back, if I can't see his vitals perfectly and I can't make a perfect ethical shot, just for me, I'm not saying it's wrong because I know plenty of people get away with it, but it can cost you and it can wound a deer for. So for me, that was a big adjustment, was like coming to the realization I will not take a shot that's not perfect. It's hard to make a 22-yard shot less perfect, but when you have stuff in the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
I shot more than I ever
really
have, I love to shoot. It's something I do anyway, but this last season I just shot and I shot and I shot and I shot just to make sure if that moment ever came back again, whether it was that close or if it was further, that I was going to be ready. And really, because I think everybody struggles a little bit target panic, maybe not like Hunter, but
yeah, I don't think that guy does.
I worked with guys like Hunter and Jeff, and kind of learned their mindset when they're shooting, and had them help me and give me some tips, and even Jace, just so that when the time came again, if it did, I would just be that much more ready. But other like a strategy wise, no. I think
but that's a great point though, because it's like, the part that you could control was the part you were going to control, right? Yeah. It's like you knew how to find him. You knew, you didn't know exactly what this upcoming season was going to present as far as like opportunities, but you knew how to kind of go find him. Then you knew you're going to have to kind of be creative a little bit, you know what I mean? Yeah. And time it right to try to get the opportunity. But and that wasn't going to always necessarily be in your control. What was going to be in your control was taking the right shot and being able to execute it whenever the time came. Right. Yeah. And the thing is like a lot of people, I think, do learn that the hard way. Right. It's like, I think a lot of guys are I won't say but are overconfident in their abilities to shoot, because I always say, it's like, I'm not a great archer. I'm not like Hunter. Few people are, right. Yeah. But you put me on like a 3D course and I'll shoot okay. Like some shots I'll look like, by God, that guy can shoot. And then there's some shots where it's like, dude, what's that guy doing with the bow? Not that bad. Right. Right. But you know what I mean, right? But it seems like for whatever reason, whenever shit gets thick, in the moment, it's like I'm able to make a shot. You know what I mean? Like I'm able to put it where I need to put it, small things like I lost the one in Missouri that hit a small twig. We went back and looked at the footage. Like I never saw it, but I mean, that arrow was like dead nuts. It still hit him dead nuts where it was supposed to hit him. It just hit him sideways. So it slapped him. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, so for me, it's like, you know, that is the one thing that I can control. So I do shoot a fair amount, you know what I mean? Because like I try to be as good as I can be. But you're controlling that one thing. So that's a huge adjustment, knowing that like
you said, it's almost two parts, right? I'm controlling how good of a shot I am, but I'm also controlling when I decide to take a shot.
Yes.
Because I think that those are two different things. I think you can
totally different things.
You can think you're too good of a shot and then make it and try to pull off some hero shot.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't know if that's what I was doing.
I don't think you were, because I mean, I think like the way you described it to me and stuff, it's like I feel like 98% of guys, you know, would take that shot. You know what I mean? Like, and like that's a great point.
The only chance the entire season that I was going to be that close to that deer with that much of his body exposed.
Yeah.
Like it was that, you know, he was that hard to get into open,
right,
you know, frame.
And so I think going back to what, you know, the point I guess I was trying to make when I got off on a tangent was like knowing what your limitations are, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was the other part you were controlling. And because for me, it's like the point of me saying like, I don't shoot well on a 3D course, but I shoot okay whenever I'm in the woods. But it's like that 3D course, like errant arrow every now and then is what keeps me kind of like sane and in check of like what my abilities are. You know what I mean? Where it's like, dude, you ain't Levi Morgan, you ain't Hunter Hogan. Exactly. Like, you know, that's got to be a good shot for you to take it. And it played out last year in Kansas where it's like, I had the deer I was trying to kill at like roughly 25-ish yards with enough light to put the pin on him. So I had enough legal shooting light that I could shoot him. But I knew where he was at, that there were saplings in front of him. And I knew that they were roughly vital high because I was in there, vitals high, because I was in there like 3 days before that to kind of like figure out where I wanted to kind of set up when I got the right wind. Mm-hmm. And I ended up not taking the shot because I couldn't see the small saplings that he was standing in to know that he was clear of them, that I wasn't going to have a deflection. And so I just didn't take the shot. You know,
I think that was the right decision.
Yeah. And it's like,
as much as you wanted to probably shoot him, that's when you wound a deer, you know, you break its leg or you know, whatever. You shoot it forward, you shoot it back, whatever happens. But
but that was me checking my ego, going like, yeah, dude, you ain't that smooth. You know,
no,
you know what I mean?
You can't. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can't decide what that arrow is going to do if it hits something.
That's it. Yeah,
you know?
And it does some weird stuff, man.
They do.
You know what I mean? They, you know, like even when they hit deer, like again, that deer that I shot this past week, like shoulder, heart, it came out his armpit, it went into his left leg, and then it went down his leg and then came out like the bottom of his, like by his foot, like, and so it traveled the bone like partially and then came out. It was super weird, like where the holes were. Yeah. And like I've heard of that, like watching like ballistic stuff with bullets, because people always say like when a bullet gets inside of a body, it does weird shit. Like it'll hit you in one place, it'll travel down a leg and like whatever. It'll just follow the path of least resistance, right? It's going to follow the bone till an exit point or whatever. But it was, you know, odd. But yeah, so that's a great point, man. Like you're going to control the things that you can control. So we're going to fast forward now to this year, right? You're getting ready. The season's getting ready to kick off. Like what's your plan of attack?
So I guess I'll start. I found him again. The first time I went to look for him, I think it took me from the time I picked up my binoculars, probably 15 seconds to find him.
You gotta be kidding me.
Exactly. I mean, I watched him all the previous summers, and he was exactly where he always sits in the 200 acres. And it was like, gotcha. You know,
it was unkillable deer ever.
It is. It was just like, dang it, you know, like here you are. But I was so putting eyes back on him was something I've never experienced as far as, you know, seeing a deer for, you know, almost feels like seeing him for the first time. But, you know, I knew he was alive, and then I kind of waited until I knew I'd be able to pick him out of a crowd if there was more than one deer. And I pulled up my binoculars. I said, let's just see. And I looked right where he usually sits, and there he was. Immediately what I noticed was that, sadly, still a great deer, but he was not nearly as wide. He had dropped 4 scoreable points, and a little bit of mass. it's him. I mean, all of his character, it's everything that's him. It's just he kind of came in a little bit and dropped some mass. That shed, for instance, his bases were over 6, and then the bases on when I killed him were 4.5.
Okay. Yeah.
So he dropped. I mean, he was hurting still.
Yeah.
From that shoulder. But he was still a great deer. I was guessing he was probably in the mid 160s now, but it didn't matter. You know, it was like, oh, he's still my deer. You know, like
you got that history with him and stuff, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like,
I mean, I'm never going to scoff at a 160 anyway. Don't get me twisted, but I just mean it like, you know, at one point he was truly, like I said, it was an 80-inch shed. He was probably 23 to 24 wide.
Wow.
So he was
in the 80s.
Low to mid 80s.
Right.
Somewhere in there, especially with he no longer had his G5s, and he no longer had split brows. So still, like I said, great deer, amazing deer, but had just lost a little bit. And that was the first thing I noticed, and it kind of made me sad that I did that to him.
Right.
I was like, damn, that was all me.
Right.
So
yeah. So you immediately find him, right? Like, you're like, look right where he's at, where he's supposed to be, and he's there.
I didn't even need to watch him the rest of the summer after that. It was like, well, there he is, you know, and that's kind of how I felt. But I did still do my due diligence and go back and watch him. But one thing I did notice was, like I said, towards the end of the summer, I couldn't find him. I knew he was in there, but the stuff was so tall that it was impossible to see him. And I knew that I was not going to be able to hunt that deer until something changed.
Right.
There was corn on one side of this CRP, and I told myself, probably until that corn is cut, or until they cut the CRP, you're not going to get in here. And that all kind of happened at once for me, actually, around the 1st of October.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question, is like, you know, so you've located him now, you know, and then shit gets super tall and you can't really see him. You know, what's your... So like you're kind of saying your game plan is like something has to change. You know, they got to cut something in order for me to get a chance. So
I mean, in reality, I did one day. I hunted somewhere else just to like get a hunt in on September 15th, and there were some other good deer I'd found. There was only one other deer I would even consider shooting, other than him. But my heart always was set on, you know, shooting the wide one. But I went and sat there, and then that was on a Saturday, and Sunday I was already over at the wide one, even though I told myself I couldn't. I'm literally sitting in the tree looking around at nothing. I mean, I'm just staring at the grass. And I'm like, what am I doing? You know, I hunted there a morning and an evening, and I was like, okay, I got to get out of here until there was no reason for me to muck it up. Right. Yeah. I could sit there and eventually give that deer a clue that I'm there. He'd catch my wind eventually or something, but I stayed out until they end up cutting the corn, and they end up, and I was keeping tabs on that, right? I was watching that. I could, until they cut the corn in a few lanes in the CRP. I wasn't going to go back in, and they finally did. And I said, okay, here's my time.
Now, was that deer being hunted by anybody else that you know of?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Turns out more than I thought, because when I killed him, I was getting a bunch of texts from other people who had also taken video of that deer from not this year, but the year before.
Okay. Do you know whether or not they had much of an idea of like where exactly he was living and what he was doing?
One guy
did?
Yeah. One guy did, because so they cut all the corn in some of the CRP on Friday. This would have been, I'd have to look at the dates, but I'll just say it was Friday, they cut it all, and on Monday I killed him. Okay. So we'll go there. Oh, I never got that sent to you. So they cut everything on Friday, and Saturday morning went and watched for him, didn't see him. Saturday evening I went ahead and sat in my tree, my observation tree. Yeah. And there was a guy who I guess had seen him and slid about 120 yards in front of me on the ground. Okay. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, someone's in here and going to kill this deer, and it's...
Dude, how tragic would that have been if he would have killed that deer in front of you? Oh.
Very, yeah. But he's a good guy. Yeah. Good guy. He had every right to hunt it too. So, yeah. we ended up talking later in the parking lot and stuff, and even went to dinner and stuff like that and talked about that deer. So
nice.
But he ended up bowing out. So that was really, really cool of him. He called me the next morning and he was like, "Hey man, I just wanted to let you know I'm bowing out. I want you to go kill this deer." So
that's
really,
awesome,
really
dude.
Cool of him to let me just be able to hunt that alone. But
you ain't find many guys like that, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's awesome.
Yeah, because he knew how big that deer was too. So,
yeah,
really cool of him. So yeah, there was that, and he was really the only threat to that deer because he
knew what was up. Like he knew
what was up.
Yeah,
he knew what was up.
He knew what the game plan was in order to try to get an opportunity.
Yeah, he knew. So and I was scared. Like when I watched, I was like, "Oh my god, my deer is dead." Like, he knows something I don't, and my deer is dead.
Right.
And I was having a little mini panic attack, but
right,
anyway.
Yeah. It's like you didn't. I might have started yelling from the tree, like like trying to get alert the deer. Yeah, something like.
Gosh, yeah. So anyway, that was all Saturday. Sunday, I hunted for him, watched for him, didn't see him. Hunted for him Sunday night, didn't see him. And then Monday morning was
So let's go. Let's do this. Monday's the day, right?
Yeah.
So
which I haven't seen him, which has been strange. I know that other guy saw him one time.
Right.
But now I'm wondering, did he get bumped or something? Is he out of that patch, or is he staying low because he smelled somebody, or what happened?
So what are you thinking for so what did they cut lanes in the CRP at this point, right? And they pulled out all the corn?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All the corn except for like 12 rows along the edge. They left it for, like 800 yards. They left that. So he could have been in that. I didn't really know where he was.
Right. All right. So you're getting ready to hunt him on Monday. Like what's the plan? Because last time it was, on the ground, using that they removed some stuff, using that to your advantage.
Yeah.
What is your plan here? What is the thing that you're kind of banking on to like?
Well, the reason I even would hunt in the mornings was not to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect ever to kill him in the morning at all, and I didn't. But it was always to watch him go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
If I could watch him go to bed, I had real, live, accurate information of exactly where that deer was bedded down, and I could get, between him and whatever food source or whatever he was trying to do. That was always the mission.
Did he have consistent exit routes out of where he was bedded in that spot? Because, I mean, at this point you haven't seen him, but you have to think in your mind, he hasn't changed in years. Why would he change now unless he got bumped some way somehow? But he has to almost be in that same spot, right?
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
but it wasn't true. That's
plot twist.
It is. It's a plot twist. So I'm guilty of really putting this deer into a box, and forgetting he's a live animal with a brain. Like that goes and does other things. So I'm always looking for him in one spot. I'm always waiting for him to walk back into the same bedding area, and I didn't see him. And I'm like, gosh, again, this is 3 days in a row after this stuff's been cut, and I haven't, 3 mornings in a row, I have not seen him. What's going on? And it's like 7:45, almost 8 o'clock, and it just so happened that I turn around and I look all the way down this cornfield, like 800-900 yards away, that I've never even seen him over there. And I see some does, and I see a deer, a really big body deer, thrashing some corn stalks with his antlers. And I'm like, what the heck? I had never really seen that, and I never really see bucks right where that buck was. And throw up the binoculars, I could see it's a good one. And throw up my camera, which has got a 125 zoom on it, and I'm like, this is a wide one. Like what is he doing down there at 8 o'clock? Like, it had been light for an hour.
Right.
So I was shocked. Now, it was overcast and it was kind of foggy, and I think that played a part into it. But he was completely out of place. He would by 7:15 he was always back in the same exact spot every day. And he wasn't there, and I never saw him, and I was very curious at what he was doing. And then I see him like almost 1,000 yards away, thrashing corn stalks at 8,
Broad daylight.
Broad daylight. And that was the mistake he made. And the real mistake he made was I think he got caught up not realizing it was as late as it was, because then he had to slide into a very tiny bedding area. He was down there on that corner of that field, and there was about a 2-acre little CRP patch with some trees in it that I watched him walk into. I said, well, if you want to do that, you might just die. Right. That's what I needed to see. I've never seen him do that.
Do you think he was doing that previously? Do you think he was doing that at other times and you just never noticed it? Maybe.
I can't say for certain, but every other time I'd seen him ever go to bed, which was a lot of times, he had never done that. And I don't know if it was because of the other guy that was in there hunting potentially bumped him or smelled that area up, and so he was a little uncomfortable in there because he was that guy was right in his bedding area, really close. So I don't know if that changed it and he kind of was using a secondary bedding area and that was it, or he just stayed out a little late, hanging out.
And then was like, oh shit, I got to get to bed. Like I can't get all the way over there.
I'm gonna get out of sight, and he didn't realize it, and then he slid into that thing. That's almost what I think happened, is that he was probably making his way back up there, but just was coming back a little late. And so he decided to duck into that stuff. So it really allowed me to kind of have the ball in my court for one time.
Right. All right. So you see him go to bed in that spot, right? Did you actually see him bed down, or did you just realize like, okay, it's this time and he's bedded somewhere in that 2 acres?
Yeah, there was nowhere else he could go.
Okay.
He would have had to cross more open ground to get to another thick area.
Got it.
For the most part. I mean, kind of. But there was one other option he could have done, which was go into that, which I saw him go into that. And then he would have had to loop around a long way, kind of exposing himself for too long to get back to his
normal spot.
His bed. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I had every indication to believe that he was bedding in that exact spot.
Right. So now the challenge here is that because you've never seen him do that before, it's like you have to think about like, well, what's his exit for this spot? Like where's he want to go and where's he coming out of?
That was kind of the fun part, was that for once I kind of got to like dissect a new thing that he might do. That was so much more fun than, the same old thing I've been doing with this deer.
Right.
But I know he always used like low spots to move. Anytime he was in that big 200 acres, he would use ditches. Like the ditches, it was a flat field, but he would find the ditch and he would always work the ditch. And there was this CRP patch, and on the back of the CRP patch, if you wanted to get out of there and get to like the next thick thing to move, you were going to move. You could come out the back side of this thing on the south end of it and move through a low spot, like a ditch that came down. And that's what I guessed he would do. And there's one tree back there on the back side of that was about, I think it was about 50 or 60 yards away from the bedding area. And then if he used that ditch, he would only be like 15 to 18 yards away.
Right. So what wind did you need for that setup based on where you thought he was bedded and where that tree was at?
Yeah. It was, as soon as he walked in there, I was like, you're dead. You're so, like, I mean, I say that now, but I really
but in your mind, you were like, everything I need to have right is lining up for me to go in and have.
Yeah. I needed a north wind because I could get south of it in a tree. And so that's what I had. I had a north wind, and I got in there. I pulled my set. I grabbed some food, and I was set up by like 12:30, 1 o'clock. I was just going to see if he made any move at all. Hunter was mad I left for food. He was like, what are you doing? He's like, you need to go sit on him all day. I'm like, you're right. I felt stupid that I left,
Right. I know.
So I got in there really, really quiet, took my time because I knew this was probably my one true chance to kill him from a tree, to kill him, you know, where again my ball was kind of in, or the ball was kind of in my court. So took my time. I only was one stick high. Couldn't get any higher because this tree was, you know, kind of gnarly, and I wasn't gonna try to break any branches or anything. You know, I got one stick high and set up and sat there in that 0.5, and from like 12:30 to 6:45, I was kind of aching by then in that little stand.
Right.
But yeah.
Nice. So you're set up, you're one stick high, and you got the wind that you need.
Yep.
And it's, you know, getting to closing time, right? Prime time's coming up. Like, what are you thinking now?
So right around 5 o'clock, every doe in the county decided to pop out into the field in front of me. And I was like, that was a good sign. Honestly, I was like, this is great, because it made me feel like he might get up earlier, but it also put a lot of eyes on me. And I was
that's
like,
where I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were probably at the minimum, they were like 60, 70, and maximum they were all the way 200 to 300 yards away. They were just feeding out in the field, and they paid no mind to me. And my wind was perfect the whole evening. And I was just hoping I was going to see him. I didn't think he would do what they were doing. I did not expect him to just come out in broad daylight on this field and start feeding, and he didn't. He did exactly what I thought he would do, being a smart old buck. He popped out the backside and started to work his way down the drain. And I was like, I'm going to have a, you know, I saw him he kind of bounded out of that tall stuff. So it kind of surprised me. Grabbed my bow real quick, tried to get the camera on him. And he bounded that stuff, and he started to come down the ditch. And then he actually slid back in to the edge of the bedding area to work a scrape and like a licking branch. And that was just my one opportunity I had. It was 57 yards, and he was working that kind of in a. There was a little hole. It was clear, mind you. There was a little gap right on all of his entire body. His head I couldn't see hardly because he was messing with a licking branch, but I could see his whole body, and I range 56, 57 right in that area, and got the camera on him, of course, bumped it out of the way, and I drew back. And this was definitely, I think the proudest part for me is what I did in my shot, which was, I was there. I was conscious. I didn't, there's so many times where I don't really remember the shot or remember talking myself through the shot. And this was not that case. I knew I'd already messed up once on this deer. So this was like my redemption shot, and I needed to make it happen. And that's definitely the farthest shot I've ever taken on a deer. But I practice out to 80 every day. And so 57 felt pretty doable.
Right.
Not that I ever want to shoot one at 80, by the way. I don't ever want to have to shoot 57 again. But I wasn't going to, seeing him standing broadside, I wasn't going to let this opportunity go by. And my pin fell on him one time, and I almost squeezed. You know, as soon, you know how that pin gets on, you just want to pop it. Well, I didn't do that. It's something I've been practicing on a deer target at my house, is letting my pin float on that deer for a while, just getting comfortable having it float around on the target I want to shoot. And I did that. I stayed way off his shoulder because I wasn't having any of that again. Right. I was really intentionally shooting for center mass. He was slightly quartered away, so it was perfect for what I wanted to do, and shot that arrow, and I can see it in slow motion, just sticking him right in the middle of the body.
Damn. So were you conscious enough to where you like watched the arrow disappear through him, like where it's like poof, and just like,
well, it never disappeared through him, but yeah, okay. I remember everything. I was shooting a Rage 2.3, so it's a really big cut. Yeah. And it takes a lot of energy going through him to get it was buried up to the fletchings, but it did not, it got a full pass through, if you will, but it came out the other side. It just didn't go all the way through him. Right. So and in turn, I actually enjoyed that, because as he ran off, and I did get him on video running off, I got to see right where I hit him. Right. which was like starting in the liver, and it looked like it was coming out behind the shoulder.
Right.
So
what are your initial thoughts after releasing the arrow?
I watched him run off with that arrow directly in his side, and I knew no matter what, that's a dead deer.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat back and took some time to myself there. I remember, kind of freaking out for a sec, and then I sat there, I laughed, and then the laugh turned into like an adrenaline dump, like ugly cry.
Right.
Like I never even felt that. Like I was like, what is happening here? I never even felt adrenaline like that in my life. A laugh turned into like a little cry, and I'm like, oh God, who am I, sappy guy? But it meant a lot to me, and it was a pretty crazy feeling to know that was coming to an end.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, that, and I mean, it's like you had, so much time wrapped up in that deer, that. I mean, he was literally a part of your life for multiple seasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, really just kind of, like I said, kind of screwed me up and gave me a lot of self-doubt over the last year of hunting after that. Like I just, so getting to kind of finish the job really gave me a lot of confidence back.
Right. Yeah. And that's probably like the bigger thing, like as opposed to like, it's what the deer mean to you, but sometimes whenever you have those challenges that you're trying to overcome, it's that personal growth that means a bunch to you is what kind of hits you. You know what I mean?
Like being able to just stay focused in the moment and do what was necessary.
Yeah.
To actually finish the job was like, that's why I said I'm so proud of the shot. It's not so much like the distance or anything. It was just the discipline within the moment that I really look back and appreciate, and I'm proud of myself for. So
yeah. So what? How has the I guess the journey, if you will, of chasing this deer, like, cause it's a field tag and it's an awesome deer, and and all the the accolades that come with shooting a deer like that, but like how has it impacted you as a hunter, like? Not just from like a tactic standpoint or a strategy standpoint, like has it taught you anything, or has it changed you at all, like hunting this deer?
Yeah. I'd say the biggest lesson was probably what I said, was that you can't put a deer in a box. Maybe. And I'm not very good at articulating what I mean, I think, but I really thought I knew everything about this deer. I'd spent a lot of time watching him, and I thought I knew every move he would make. And we don't. Like, I saw him 1,000 yards away from where I normally see him, and for some reason I'm surprised by that. Like, it's not a deer that can walk around. Like I was shocked that he would even be where he was, and I really shouldn't be. I need to be more open to like, not just what I know about the deer, but what I don't.
Right.
So
that's a good lesson in life, not just in hunting, right? Like we don't always know what we think we know.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So I think that's something I took away. Hopefully, I think I built something there within that shot that I made that I hopefully I can take forward, is just staying in that moment, and really focusing in the shot. Like, don't let the moment overtake you to where you can't execute a shot, because that's something I've done in the past, and just, you just shoot arrows, and it's worked out most of the time, but then there's been times it hasn't. So
well, I mean, it's that practice with purpose, right? It's like, since I've had this shoulder injury, I might be shooting better than I've shot in a long time, but it's because I don't shoot a lot. I just shoot very intentional arrows.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'll go out in my backyard. I can shoot out to about 53 to 55 yards, maybe, whenever I, stretch out in the backyard. But I'll go out and I'll have like maybe a target set up there, and I'll have one set at like 26 or something like that. And I'll shoot just 3 arrows. That's it, and those 3 arrows, I pretend like there's only 3 arrows I have. They're at 3 different animals. Right. And like all 3 have to count, And it removes the luxury of having do-overs again, even if it's just back in the backyard. Like you're just like having an intentional shot sequence, like where it's not a throwaway shot,
Right.
And I think that that's really important, and then, it sounds like that was kind of like your approach. Like if everything you did was very intentional.
Yes.
So.
And if I can do that moving forward, I will. Now, something maybe I take away is, gosh, I loved hunting one deer, but I hated hunting one deer. I mean, I love it now because I finally got him, but
right.
Hunting one deer is brutal. And passing other deer. I mean, I guess I didn't even mention on the first night of opener, I passed a deer that's knocking on 150 at 13 yards.
Jeez.
And I'm like sitting there staring at this deer. I've got him on video at 13 yards walking in a creek bed, and it could have been the most money video and shot I've ever had of my life. And I didn't take it, so I don't really want to have to do that again. And, I'm glad this outcome was awesome. It's better than I could have asked for, but
right.
I also do love hunting just deer,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I'll do next. I'm still up in the air if next year I'll go after a singular buck again, or if I'll just kind of hunt the opportunities, hunt like a coyote. We'll see.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. That was a long 2 years.
Yeah, it was. I'll be interested to catch up with you next year, next fall, and see if you have one in mind, or if you're just going out and
I'm sure I'll have one in mind. I say I won't.
Awesome, man.
To think, but yeah.
Well, dude, I'm super happy for you, man. When I saw that post, I was stoked. And then as soon as I saw it, I was like, dude, we gotta get on and talk about it. I got to hear about how this thing played out. I'm glad that it finally came to a happy ending. I'm a firm believer in like all the hard luck that you have along the way just is for a reason, is for purpose, right? And it creates a foundation, to do challenging things going forward, right? Sometimes you have to go through the suck to get to the good stuff, And so that's kind of how I felt about this when I saw that you killed this deer. I was like, it's very, very much appropriate, and it just builds a launching pad for even bigger and better things, man. I have no doubt. And I feel like we're going to be doing a lot of these with Missouri crew over the next couple of years, because you guys are straight killers. And I'm coming to Missouri one of these years and hunting with you guys.
Oh, I lost you again. Oh, lost you again there. Sorry. You said
all right.
You have a feeling we'll have a lot of these?
Yeah, it's like I have a feeling we're going to have more of these in the next few years with the Missouri Killer Group, and then I'm going to end up having to come hunt with you guys one year. Is what the plan is.
If you guys, when are you planning on coming to Missouri? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't have any plans right now. I was actually thinking about it last night because I don't know if I'm going to draw Iowa next year or not, and I don't know if I'm going to put in for it or not, because I think I'll be on the fence. So what I was considering doing is I think I'm going to go back to Idaho to hunt elk, and then I think what I was going to do is maybe just hop to Missouri next fall.
Okay, cool.
But if I kill one early in Kansas, the plan is to maybe swing through Missouri on my way home. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
You should, man. Yeah, you got a lot of guys now.
That's right. That's right. I got the killer crew, so I'm all taken care of there. But
I don't know about that. We get lucky every once in a while. That's for sure.
Nice, man. Well, I'm going to let you get out of here, man. But before I let you roll, let folks know where they can follow you, find out more about what you got going on, because you have a whole fishing side of things that you do too. So give people some notice where they can follow what's going on with Austin Culbertson.
Yeah. So Facebook and Instagram, you can go to Austin Culbertson Fishing or just Austin Culbertson Fishing, not .com. You can follow along there. I like you said, I fish for a living, so I travel the country fishing. I try to post every tournament recap and base stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in any fishing stuff, definitely follow along, and I do post all my hunting stuff there as well.
Yeah, it blows my mind you're a better fisherman than you are a hunter. That's saying something.
I don't know if I am or not. Maybe I'm bad at both. I just get lucky every once in a while. But I don't know.
All right, brother. Well, hey, man, thanks for coming on, man. I'll talk to you soon, and enjoy the rest of your fall.
All right, you too, man. Good luck.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.